Chapter 55. Life on the left, death on the right. 1. Also Poison. Boneblade's eyes widened in despair. He wanted to say something, but at the next moment, he felt his head spinning and he fainted. At this moment, the fog also enveloped them, engulfing Xu Qing and Boneblade's figures. For hours later, at the edge of the jungle in the Forbidden Zone, at a crossroad, Boneblade felt a sharp pain in his body. He woke up and opened his eyes. The instant he opened his eyes, he looked around blankly. However, he quickly jumped up nervously. After confirming that the place he was at wasn't dangerous and that he didn't see Xu Qing's figure, he heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he also discovered that the swelling on his face had subsided and there weren't many changes to his body before he was poisoned. In Not Dead, Boneblade's heart pounded rapidly as the feeling of surviving a calamity was extremely intense. At the same time, he also noticed a piece of bamboo beside him with a line of words carved on it. The insurance has been used. Looking at these 4 words, Boneblade felt complex emotions in his heart. He also felt a little ashamed of his little trick earlier. After a while, he sighed softly and bowed deeply toward the depths of the jungle. "Thank you." As he muttered, he turned and looked into directions ahead. The one on the right was the path he had to take to return to the campsite, and the one on the left was the path he had to take to leave the campsite and enter Santa City. He stood there and didn't sense anyone around him. Hence, he fell silent for a long time. The camp leader is from the Diamond Sect. Their sphere of influence covers all the nearby cities. Even if I escape into Santa City, I'm afraid I won't be able to avoid the camp leader's anger, especially since his men are all dead. Boneblade struggled. He knew that there was a way for him to have a chance to survive, and that was to go to the campsite and snitch on a matter of the kid killing the camp leader's subordinates. From there, he could throw everything onto the kid. With this, he should be able to survive. However, doing this went against his conscience. After all, the kid saved him. However, after pondering for a moment, the struggle in his heart turned into determination. In this chaotic world, surviving is the most important thing. I can't care about others anymore. Thinking of this, he suppressed the guilt in his heart. With a sway of his body, he sped in the direction of the campsite. However, the instant his body stepped into the direction of the campsite, a cold beam of light whistled over at an astonishing speed from behind him, instantly penetrating his head. 1. With a bang, Boneblade's entire body trembled and blood splattered everywhere. His eyes were wide open as he fell to the ground and twitched a few times. In his eyes, the world was covered by an approaching figure. It slowly turned pitch black until it became eternal. He breathed his last and died. Xu Qing stood in front of Boneblade's corpse and silently took out the iron stick. Xu Qing had a deep understanding of human nature. Hence, he didn't leave but gave Boneblade a choice. 1. Life was on his left, death was on his right. Boneblade chose the right. Xu Qing was expressionless. He took out the corpse-destroying powder and scattered it on the ground. As the Boneblade's corpse melted, Xu Qing calmly turned around and sped into the depths. As for the camp leader's matter, he couldn't be bothered to participate. At that moment, he was speeding through the jungle. Although there was fog here, it didn't affect him too much. Hence, at dusk, Xu Qing had already passed through the fog and arrived at the lab in the canyon. Almost at the same time he entered, a weak vol echoed out. Xu Qing didn't mind it. He first observed cautiously to make sure that there were no traces of tempering in the small arrangement he had left behind before he left. Only then did he push open the door of the lab and step in. The lab wasn't big and didn't have a bed to rest on. Only the surroundings were filled with small wooden grids, and in each of the grids were different medicinal herbs and poison glands. Some of these medicinal herbs and poison glands had already been treated, while some remained intact. There were quite a lot of them, and there were hundreds of them densely packed together. Xu Qing's gaze swept over and waves of satisfaction rose in his heart. These were what he had gathered in this forbidden zone ever since he started learning from grandmother Bai. Most of them came from the outer edges of the forbidden zone, and a small portion came from the depths. There were a lot of poisons and very few medicinal herbs inside. Xu Qing first checked before he sat on the ground with a pondering look in his eyes. Although the white pill formula that grandmother Bai gave him was hidden in his daily lessons, Xu Qing had the habit of taking notes and had a good memory. Hence, he had sorted them out long ago. It was just that he didn't have all the medicinal herbs needed to refine white pills. Therefore, there's no way to refine it completely according to the pill formula. However, I should be able to replace or concoct it with other medicinal herbs based on their medicinal properties. Xu Qing mumbled. He didn't know if this method would be useful, but even if he failed, he could still increase his experience in concocting. At the thought of this, Xu Qing waved his right hand and 7 to 8 types of medicinal herbs instantly flew out from different compartments and landed in front of him. After taking a closer look, Xu Qing thought about it and left the lab to head to the backyard. Other than all sorts of colorful flowers, there was also a small piece of soil field that had been planted with many medicinal herbs. These were all plants that had a time limit and couldn't be left behind for too long. After Xu Qing moved them here, they eventually became a small medicinal field. At that moment, as Xu Qing walked closer to the small medicinal field, the wolf howls not far away became even clearer. Xu Qing's expression remained the same, and he didn't bother with them. He plucked 3 types of medicinal herbs from the medicinal field, then turned to leave. After returning to the pharmacy, he took out a stone basin and started mixing according to the knowledge he had learned. Regardless of whether it was plucking the leaves, extracting the juice, or flicking out the pollen, he did it very carefully. He strove to make sure that he didn't miss a single detail as he continued to mix. The medicinal liquid in the stone basin slowly turned pitch black.